What if you had everything? Money, power, success, but lost the one thing that truly mattered. This is the story of a millionaire who learned the hard way that love is worth more than fortune. Stay till the end, because this one will change the way you see life. Welcome to Mr. Paul Stories, where every tale is filled with drama, emotion, and life-changing lessons. In today's gripping story, we dive into the life of Jack, a man who had it all but realized too late that wealth can't buy happiness. If you love powerful storytelling with deep moral lessons, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Now, let's begin. Jack Thompson had everything most people could only dream of: power, prestige, and an empire built from the ground up. At 42, he was a billionaire, a man whose name was spoken in business circles with admiration and envy. He lived in a penthouse that overlooked the dazzling skyline of New York City, a testament to his relentless ambition. Yet, despite his immense success, an underlying emptiness loomed in the shadows of his wealth, though he refused to acknowledge it. Jack's penthouse was the epitome of luxury. Towering glass walls revealed breathtaking views of the city that never slept. The interior was a masterpiece of modern design: sleek marble floors, imported Italian furniture, and an extensive collection of rare art curated from his travels around the world. Every item had been carefully chosen, a reflection of his wealth and refined taste. His walk-in closet was the size of a small apartment, housing tailored suits that cost more than what most people made in a year. In his underground garage, a fleet of luxury cars, Bentleys, Ferraris, and a Rolls-Royce Phantom, awaited his command. Even the air inside his penthouse smelled of money, rich leather, aged whiskey, and a hint of exclusivity. To the outside world, Jack had won the game of life. He had power, respect, and an empire stretching across multiple industries: technology, real estate, and finance. But within the golden walls of his empire, silence was his only companion. Jack wasn't born into privilege. He was the son of a factory worker and a waitress, growing up in the gritty streets of a working-class Chicago neighborhood. His childhood was painted with memories of struggle, late rent notices, the hum of worry in his mother's voice, and the cold reality of never having enough. He still remembered the nights he lay awake, listening to his parents argue about bills, the shame of wearing hand-me-down clothes, the sting of being the kid who couldn't afford a school trip. But the moment that shaped him the most was his father's desperate, defeated expression when he lost his job. Jack had been 14. He had come home from school to find his father sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a layoff notice with vacant eyes. His mother had tried to comfort him, but her voice trembled with fear. That night, Jack made a vow. He would never be powerless. He would never be poor again. Jack worked harder than anyone else. In high school, he studied by candlelight when the electricity was cut off. While other kids played video games, he read business books borrowed from the public library. At 18, he earned a scholarship to a prestigious university. Unlike his wealthy classmates, he juggled multiple part-time jobs, often going to class with barely any sleep. He didn't party, didn't date, didn't waste time. He had a singular focus: money and success. By 25, he launched his first tech startup. The beginning was brutal: long nights, endless rejections, and barely scraping by. Investors turned him down. His credit cards maxed out. He lived off cheap instant noodles in a tiny, roach-infested apartment. But Jack didn't quit. He built his business from the ground up with relentless determination. His breakthrough came when he developed a revolutionary AI software that streamlined business operations. Fortune 500 companies took notice, and within 3 years, His company was valued at over $500 million. By 30, he had built a multi-million-dollar empire. By 35, he was a billionaire. His company expanded into real estate, fintech, and venture capitalism, making him one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the world. Forbes featured him as one of the most influential entrepreneurs of the decade. Business magnates sought his advice. He had everything he had ever dreamed of: private jets, exclusive memberships, luxury at his fingertips. But the hunger never stopped. He wasn't just chasing wealth. He was running from his past. Jack had built an empire, but it came at a cost. Friendships had faded. Relationships were fleeting. His phone was filled with contacts of CEOs, investors, and lawyers, but there was no one to call just to talk. Women adored him for his money, his power, his status, but no one truly knew him. His longest relationship lasted 6 months before he ended it, the same way he ended all the others, with an impersonal phone call and a severance check. He had told himself that love was a distraction, a weakness. Money was control. Love was chaos. At high-profile events, he was always surrounded by people, yet he never felt more alone. The conversations were the same: profits, acquisitions, success. No one asked him how he felt, not that he would have known how to answer. The closest thing Jack had to a personal connection was his assistant, Ryan, who had been with him for over a decade. One evening, as they reviewed schedules in his office, Ryan hesitated before saying, "You should take a break, Jack." Jack frowned. "A break? Go somewhere. Do something that doesn't involve a deal or a boardroom." Jack smirked. "What would I even do?" Ryan sighed. "Meet someone. Someone who doesn't care about your wealth." Jack chuckled. "People like that don't exist." Ryan gave him a look. "Maybe that's the problem." Jack brushed off the comment. But later that night, as he stood alone in his penthouse, looking out over the city, something in Ryan's words lingered. Was this all there was? Jack told himself that he was happy. Success was everything. His penthouse was filled with everything money could buy: luxury, power, security. But it still felt empty. Love was fleeting. Money, however, was permanent. Or so he believed. One evening, Jack found himself at an exclusive charity gala, held in one of Manhattan's most prestigious venues. It was the kind of event where billionaires, celebrities, and power players gathered, not for philanthropy, but for networking and social positioning. The ballroom was breathtaking. Gold chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors. Waiters in crisp uniforms carried trays of champagne, and the air buzzed with polished conversations and the clinking of crystal glasses. Jack had attended dozens of events like this. He wasn't here for charity. He was here because his presence mattered, because every event like this strengthened his influence in business and society. He moved through the crowd with practiced ease, shaking hands, exchanging polite smiles, discussing investments, mergers, and high-stakes deals. His name carried weight, and every conversation revolved around power. Yet, even in a room full of people, Jack felt utterly alone. That's when he saw her. At the far end of the ballroom, near an art exhibit, stood a woman unlike anyone else in the room. She wasn't wearing diamonds or designer labels, and she wasn't vying for attention. Instead, she was lost in thought, studying a painting, a striking abstract piece filled with deep blues and golden swirls. Jack was intrigued. He had seen countless women in gowns that cost more than most people's yearly salary, but none of them had ever caught his eye like this. Drawn by curiosity, he approached her. "It's a beautiful piece," he said, standing beside her. She glanced at him briefly, then returned her gaze to the painting. It is. But beauty isn't about price tags. It's about emotion. Jack raised an eyebrow. Most people at this event recognized him immediately. They either tried to impress him or charm him. But this woman? She didn't even seem interested in who he was. He tilted his head. You don't think value plays a role in beauty? She smiled, her eyes filled with quiet amusement. No. The world's most expensive paintings are locked away in vaults, seen by no one. True beauty is meant to be shared, not owned. Jack found himself at a loss for words, a rare occurrence. He turned toward her fully. Jack Thompson, he introduced himself. She finally looked at him properly, her gaze calm and unreadable. Emma Sinclair. Are you an artist? He asked, noticing the way she admired the painting with genuine appreciation. I am, she said, her voice laced with pride. I paint. I teach art classes. And sometimes I sell my work when I feel it's ready to leave me. Jack had met thousands of people in his life, but Emma was different. She wasn't impressed by his wealth, nor was she intimidated by him. She spoke to him like he was just another person, not a billionaire or a business tycoon. And for the first time in a long time, Jack felt seen. They talked for what felt like hours. Emma wasn't interested in finance or stocks. She talked about passion, about how art was a reflection of the soul, about how moments, not money, made life meaningful. Jack, always in control, found himself drawn in. You work so hard, Jack, Emma said at one point, studying him with those perceptive eyes. But what are you really working for? Jack didn't hesitate. To build something lasting, to leave a legacy. Emma smiled softly. And what happens when you have everything? When your empire is bigger than you ever imagined? What then? Jack opened his mouth, but no words came out. No one had ever asked him that before. He had spent his entire life chasing success, but he had never stopped to wonder what came after. Jack and Emma began seeing each other outside of the gala. At first, he didn't understand why he was so drawn to her. She wasn't like the women he usually dated. She didn't care for luxury hotels or Michelin-starred restaurants. She preferred small, cozy cafes. She didn't want to discuss profit margins. She wanted to talk about books, music, and the human experience. One evening, they took a late-night walk through Central Park. The city lights shimmered in the distance, but Jack found himself more focused on her. Emma gestured to the skyline. This is your world, isn't it? The towers, the power, the wealth. Jack nodded. It's everything I've worked for. She turned to him. And yet, you don't look happy. Jack felt something stir inside him, a truth he didn't want to face. I am happy, he said almost defensively. Emma simply smiled. Maybe one day, you'll realize there's more. Jack wanted to believe he could have both, his empire and Emma. But deep down, he knew he would eventually have to choose. For weeks, Jack found himself caught between two worlds. On one side was Emma, with her free spirit, her ability to find joy in the smallest moments, and her insistence that life wasn't measured in dollars, but in memories. With her, Jack felt something unfamiliar. Peace. On the other side was his empire, the relentless pursuit of power, the drive that had shaped him since childhood. He had spent his entire life working to build his fortune, and stepping away, even slightly, felt like weakness. Jack believed he could balance both, but Emma saw the truth before he did. One evening, as they sat in her small art studio surrounded by half-finished paintings and the scent of oil paint, she looked at him with quiet understanding. You're scared, she said simply. Jack, leaning against the wall, smirked. Of what? Of slowing down, of realizing that money, isn't everything. Jack's smirk faded. That's not true. He hesitated. I want this. I want us. Emma reached for his hand, her touch warm. But do you want it enough to let go of the thing that controls you? Jack didn't have an answer, and then fate made the choice for him. A week later, Jack received a once-in-a-lifetime business offer. It was a deal that would expand his company globally, securing his position as one of the most powerful entrepreneurs in the world. The catch? It required him to move to London for 2 years. His advisors told him this was the opportunity of a lifetime. His investors expected him to say yes. Jack knew what the answer should be, but then he thought about Emma. Would she wait for him? Would she come with him? Or was this the moment he had to choose between love and success? That night, he met Emma at her studio. She was painting when he walked in, but as soon as she saw his expression, she put down her brush. You've already decided, haven't you? She asked softly. Jack hesitated. It's only 2 years. Emma exhaled, shaking her head. 2 years isn't just 2 years, Jack. It's a choice. It's a statement about what matters to you. Jack stepped closer. I want you, Emma. But this deal, this is my legacy. Emma searched his face. I never asked you to choose between your career and me. But I'm asking you to choose what kind of life you want to live. Jack looked away. He couldn't walk away from the deal. He had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, and yet, deep in his heart, something felt off. Emma took a shaky breath. If you go, don't expect me to wait. Jack clenched his jaw. That's not fair. Emma's voice broke. What's not fair is loving someone who will never put you first. Silence hung between them. Jack could stop this. He could tell her she was wrong, that she meant more than his career. But he didn't. Instead, he said the words that sealed his fate. I can't turn this down. Emma's eyes filled with sadness, but she nodded. Then go, Jack. But one day, you'll realize what you lost. And just like that, she walked away. Jack told himself he had made the right choice, but why did it feel like he had just lost everything? Jack boarded a private jet to London, sealing the biggest deal of his career. Cameras flashed as he stepped onto the tarmac, reporters eager to capture the moment. His name trended on business news sites, hailing him as a visionary entrepreneur. This was everything he had ever worked for. Yet, as he looked out the window at the city below, a deep, aching emptiness settled in his chest. He had expected triumph, exhilaration, not regret. For the first few months, he buried himself in work. Meetings, acquisitions, and expansion plans consumed his time. His company thrived, his wealth grew, and yet, something was missing. Jack tried to ignore the void by surrounding himself with luxury. His penthouse in London was even grander than the one in New York. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a personal staff, and a skyline view that stretched for miles. He hosted extravagant parties, filling the space with models, celebrities, and business elites. The nights blurred into a cycle of drinks, deals, and distractions. But at the end of every night, when the music stopped and the guests left, he was alone. One evening, after another empty party, he sat on his balcony with a glass of whiskey. The city sparkled beneath him, but he felt nothing. He reached for his phone out of habit, then hesitated. His fingers hovered over Emma's contact. It had been months. Would she even answer? Before he could decide, his assistant, Ryan, interrupted. There's a gala tomorrow with the top investors, Ryan said. Good networking opportunity. Jack exhaled, rubbing his temples. Yeah, set it up. He shoved his phone away, refusing to let himself dwell on the past. But Emma's words echoed in his mind. One day, you'll realize what you lost. Jack's life became a routine of excess. Lavish events, business trips, luxury vacations. But no matter where he went, he saw reminders of Emma. A street artist painting on a busy corner, a cafe where a woman laughed with a friend, a song playing in a hotel lobby, the same one Emma had hummed absent-mindedly as she painted. Each moment felt like a ghost pulling him back. One afternoon, after a high-stakes meeting, Jack found himself walking through an art gallery. He didn't even know why he had come. Maybe curiosity, maybe something deeper. Then he saw it. A painting. Emma's painting. It was unmistakable. Her signature brushstrokes, the vibrant colors she had always used to depict feeling rather than form. A small plaque beneath the painting read, "Emma Sinclair, finding light in the darkness." Jack's chest tightened. She was still painting, still creating, still living, without him. Jack stood there for what felt like forever. For years, he had convinced himself that success meant power, wealth, and control. But what good was an empire if he had no one to share it with? He had spent his whole life chasing financial security, only to lose the one person who made him feel truly alive. And now, she was gone. A deep, aching loneliness settled over him. For the first time in his life, Jack Thompson, the billionaire, the unstoppable businessman, felt utterly lost. Jack returned to New York after nearly 2 years in London, wealthier than ever, but emotionally drained. His company had grown beyond his wildest dreams. Every business magazine featured him as one of the greatest entrepreneurs of the century. Investors fought to work with him. Yet, he had never felt more alone. His penthouse, once a symbol of his ambition, now felt like a hollow monument to his emptiness. The city was still the same, bright, loud, and relentless. But he had changed. He walked into his home and looked around, his gaze landing on the expensive paintings, the custom furniture, and the shelves lined with awards. But there was no warmth, no laughter, no Emma. Jack poured himself a drink and sat by the floor-to-ceiling window, staring at the skyline. It was everything he had ever wanted, and yet it meant nothing. The next morning, as Jack scrolled through his emails, his eyes landed on a subject line that made his breath catch. Emma Sinclair, wedding invitation. His heart pounded as he opened it. Emma was getting married. She had moved on. She had found love, the one thing he had pushed away, thinking he didn't need it. His hands trembled slightly as he read the details. The wedding was in a small countryside town, far from the world of power and wealth he lived in. For the first time in his life, Jack felt true regret. The deals, the billion-dollar empire, the luxury, none of it mattered anymore. He had sacrificed love for success, and now he had neither. Jack left the penthouse and wandered aimlessly through the city. He walked through Central Park, remembering the nights he had spent there with Emma, her laughter, her words, the way she had made everything feel alive. He sat on a bench and watched people pass by, couples holding hands, children playing, friends sharing stories over coffee. It was in that moment that everything became clear. Money had never been the answer. Success had given him power, but it had also isolated him. And love, the one thing he had always dismissed, was the only thing that had ever made him truly happy. That night, Jack did something he never thought he would do. He wrote to Emma. "Emma, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I need to say it anyway. You were right. I spent my life chasing money, believing it would give me happiness. But I was wrong. The truth is, I was afraid to let go of control, afraid to believe that love was worth more than success. And because of that, I lost you. I won't ask for anything. I just want you to know I regret it. I regret choosing money over you. And I hope, wherever you are, you've found the happiness I was too blind to see. Jack. He stared at the letter for a long time before sealing it. He didn't expect a reply, but for the first time in years, he felt lighter. He had finally admitted the truth, to himself and to her. The next morning, Jack made a decision that shocked everyone. He stepped back from his company, sold his penthouse, and walked away from the empire he had spent decades building. Not because he had lost everything, but because he had finally realized what truly mattered. For the first time, Jack Thompson wasn't chasing money. He was chasing something real. Jack sat in a cafe near the Brooklyn Bridge, sipping a black coffee as he watched the city move around him. He had sold his penthouse, choosing instead to rent a modest apartment. The luxury cars were gone, replaced by a simple sedan he barely drove. For the first time in decades, he wasn't in a rush. For the past few weeks, he had been learning how to live. No high-stakes meetings, no stock market battles, no soulless networking events. Just life. And yet, a part of him still ached. He had spent his entire career building an empire, believing it would bring him peace. But peace had never come, not until he walked away. Now, he had time to reflect. And the one thing he kept coming back to was Emma. Jack wasn't expecting a response to the letter he had sent Emma. But 2 weeks after he mailed it, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. His heart stopped when he saw the text. Emma. Jack, I got your letter. Can we talk? He stared at the screen, his hands trembling. A part of him had given up hope. He quickly typed back. Jack. Of course. When and where? She sent an address, a small cafe near the outskirts of town. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Jack barely slept that night. The next afternoon, Jack walked into the cafe, his heart pounding. And there she was, Emma. She looked exactly the same, yet completely different. Her auburn hair tied loosely in a braid, a soft smile playing on her lips. She wasn't dressed in designer clothes like the women he had known in his world. She wore a simple white dress, her eyes full of something he hadn't seen in a long time, genuine happiness. She looked at him and exhaled softly. Jack. He nodded, swallowing hard. Emma. They sat across from each other, a silence stretching between them. For the first time in his life, Jack didn't know what to say. She was the one who broke the silence. I was surprised to get your letter, she admitted, stirring her tea. I never thought you'd understand. I didn't, he said honestly. Not until I lost you. Emma sighed, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. Jack, I cared about you, but I couldn't wait forever. I needed someone who chose love first, not last. Jack nodded, his throat tightening. And you found him? She hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yes. He's a good man. Jack clenched his fists under the table, forcing himself to breathe. This was what he had wanted for her, wasn't it? So why did you agree to meet? He asked quietly. Emma studied him. Because I wanted to see if you had really changed, and because I wanted closure. Jack exhaled, nodding. I understand. They sat there for a long time, neither rushing to leave, and for the first time, Jack accepted the truth. Emma wasn't his to win back. But maybe, just maybe, he could find peace in knowing that he had learned, that he had changed. Jack didn't ask Emma to reconsider. He didn't beg or try to convince her. Instead, he smiled at her, a real, unforced smile. I'm happy for you, Emma. Truly. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. And I hope you find happiness too, Jack. He nodded. I think I finally know where to look. As Jack left the cafe, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Relief. Emma had been right all along. Money didn't make life meaningful. Love did. And while he had lost Emma, he still had time to find something real. Not in wealth, not in power, but in connection, purpose, and giving back. And this time, he wouldn't make the same mistake. The end.